everyone, and welcome to the Good Woo. So this topic has come about because I have a few clients who are going through separations, and this is also something that I know well. I've been in many relationships and friendships that have separated, dissolved. And one of the things that we are taught in our society is to run from the pain, right? For instance, like you break up with somebody and then it's like, at least this was in the culture I grew up in our country, which was, well, go find somebody else as fast as you can, whether you care for that other person or not, to like get the other person out of your head or whatever it is. Whether we're running to like drugs and alcohol or food or just activities that are mind-numbing to try to ignore and suppress the pain of heartbreak. But today I want to offer another path, because the truth is the heart is meant to open and expand, meaning it is the vulnerability of heartbreak that actually connects us to our deepest self. So these losses, and it doesn't have to be a person or relationship, it can be a circumstance. You know, for instance, I know when the whole situation with John Carter happened, that was such a project of love for me. I loved everybody in it. I loved playing the role. And when it disintegrated, my heart was broken as an artist, as an actress, right? That took time to come back from, that pain. And the first part of it, I definitely tried to ignore that pain was there. Or there's been relationships that I've been in, and the heartache was so intense because this relationship dissolved and I wasn't able to save it, and it felt like a failure. And I ran from feeling the depth of that pain. Now, the sort of good news is you can only run so far, right? We end up getting sick if we suppress our emotions, right? We end up becoming dysfunctional if we suppress our emotions. And that's what happens with heartache. So this is a different take. This is a different way to look at this. I would like for you guys to see it as when we are wounded, when we experience a breakup and a separation, what we're actually experiencing is the part of ourselves that person reflected at the beginning, that we fell in love with. What we're actually seeing in people when we're, drunk on love in the beginning stages of relationships are aspects of ourself that we have not yet acknowledged, right? And when the relationships dissolves, what we think we are losing is that person, but what our subconscious is actually feeling is that we've lost a part of ourself, because that person represented for us, especially at the beginning, these amazing qualities, these qualities that enthralled us. But another step of this that's so important is that when your heart is broken, that is when you are truly in touch with your innermost self. And when you actually stop running from that pain and lean into it and accept it, anxiety disappears and fear disappears. And there is a presence, and we can call it pain. We can try to define it all we want, because even saying heartbreak, it's not your heart that breaks. It's your ego that breaks, because that loss strips away, right? Those qualities that you thought were yours, that person that you thought was yours, what you thought was to be yours is stripped away. And so it's the ego that breaks, and it's actually the heart that grows. So we have it all wrong. We should say, when we're experiencing a breakup or a separation, we should say it's an ego break, because your heart is actually growing stronger. Your heart expands in all ways when you are entered into loss and grief and separation. And this includes rejection, right? Because when it's stripped away, what you think is yours is stripped away from you. Your essence is actually distilled, and there is a purity that is invoked. Ideally, we want this idea of heart opening to be happening over and over and over again so that we can be the most compassionate version of ourselves. Because if you've experienced this loss, this grief, this pain, and you actually acknowledge it and you sit with it and you allow it to move through, you will have so much understanding for yourself, for the person that maybe you're in this separation with. You will also be able to connect with your fellow human in so many deeper, more profound ways, because you will be able to hold space for people who are in their own ego break, right? This idea that pain is something to run from, which it makes us sick to run from our feelings and our emotions. Physically, mentally, all of it. It's all rooted in not being able to acknowledge how we truly feel. And to sit in that place of, this is my truth, this is how I feel, there is so much power in it. So often we run from this pain and grief when we're in a breakup with somebody or a separation. We run from it, and that can turn into blaming the other person and judging the other person and hating the other person and resentment. But oftentimes, if we just admit that the love we gave will always be given, whether we choose it or not. Just to admit that sometimes the anger and the resentment, what's underneath it, is a sadness that we can no longer show that love to that person, but that love still exists. And in the weekly woo, we've been pulling, and in the extendeds, we've been pulling a lot of unconditional love cards. And working with clients who are going through breakups and separations right now, this is just becoming really clear to me that if you hold true to the love, then all of the pettiness dissipates. If you hold true to the love, even though you may not be able to express it, your own nature is what you're holding on to. That is your sacred, pure self. That is your soul. The ability that we have to unconditionally love people even if they hurt us. To unconditionally love people even if they reject us. To unconditionally love. This is the superpower. And when you're operating from that place, nothing can stop you. Now, that may mean that you need to take a break, right? When you hold that space of, I love and there's places where I can't express it, but I'm going to hold that love and I'm going to give it to myself, to just admit it, to admit the love you feel, even though it can't be maybe received by another person. This is strength. This is truth. And it is from that place, if you can operate from that place, no one can ever have anything over you. Whether it's that person, you're in that relationship with that's ended, or anything in the future that you may fear. I'm working with a client right now. They're going through a breakup, and I think the biggest fear that this person is having is that they won't love again, and that they won't want to love again, and certainly that's how they feel now. My goal with this person is to help them to see that love is the it is the baseline of our universe. This universe was created of love, and although there's all sorts of things that's come and intertwine with it, love is the base note. We always return to that. And if we can do that in our waking life, we can move through these transitions and these endings and these beginnings with grace and with compassion for others, and with a lack of judgment to self and others. Because so many of us were not taught how to love and receive love. Giving love and receiving love, even though it's an innate part of being a human, we're programmed, at least in Western society, which is what I can speak of, we're programmed right away to add all these other things on top of it. So this message is really to encourage you guys. If you're going through, you know, maybe you've lost a job, or it's a relationship is falling apart, or, you know, having issues with your children and it feels like heartbreak. There's all sorts of different scenarios that we can look at. But I want you to see it as the part that is breaking is not your ability to love. In fact, the pain and the loss and the grief and the separation is showing you how much love you're capable of, that you're capable of loving somebody even if you're not with them, even if they're destructive, even if you've lost it. This is our most powerful place. So let the ego die. Each time something is stripped from our lives, we have a choice to, why is this happening? To rage against it. Or to look at it and say, okay, how is this going to make me stronger, better, deeper, wiser? And this requires solitude. This requires silence. This requires letting yourself get mushy, letting yourself cry, letting yourself be bared open, ripped apart, so that what's left is your gleaming, unconditional, loving soul. So, in some ways, you can sort of chalk it up to how many heartbreaks have you had in your life. The more you've had, the stronger you are. And actually, the more capable you are of calling in love that is going to match you, and a partner that will equal your capacity to express love. And that is the next part, which is, how are you at expressing love? And one of the best places to start to answer this question is, how do you love yourself when you're in ego break? How do you love yourself when something has been taken away from you and something has fallen apart? Because if in that moment you can love yourself like you are your lover, like you are that partner, then on the other side of the transition, you are going to be in an even better place to manifest a connection that will honor your big badass heart. So when we have a year like this, and if we just want to look at cosmic weather, a year with the Venus retrograde, a year with the Mars retrograde, a year with, you know, Venus and Mars making all these harsh aspects to the big planets of Pluto and Saturn. It's a time to really get into this idea that our strength is our vulnerability and the honesty to say, yes, I'm in pain, but I'm going to be honest about that pain. I'm not going to act out on that pain. I'm not going to seek revenge. I'm not going to be petty. I'm not going to hold on to the resentment. I'm going to sit in the pain, and I'm going to allow my heart to grow from it. Pain is fertilizer for our soul. And I think when the Buddhists talk about, you know, suffering is inevitable, I used to be very resistant to that. But the truth is, let's look at it in a different way, that to truly cultivate our truest, deepest nature, right? The person who is comfortable being alone and the person who is filled with integrity when in relationship, then we have to get comfortable with the depths of how we feel and not run from it, not cover it up with addictions, not cover it up with, you know, meaningless sex, and not cover it up with whatever we would do to distract ourselves from the fact that we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable when we have lost. I have another friend who's going through some grief. It's not a relationship that they lost, it's something else. And the grief, I'm so proud of this person because the grief is causing this person to reach out and connect in ways that they never have before, to seek help and admit that they're feeling vulnerable. This person never admits that. And now in this point in their life, they're admitting their vulnerability. And I have to say, it makes this person so juicy and delightful to be around. And so often we think that if we express our vulnerability, that people aren't going to want to be around us, that somehow it's weak. But the truth is, to express your vulnerability is a resonance. There is a resonance that happens when you're truthful with how you feel inside and what you're actually expressing. That resonance of being, I don't know how else to say it, congruent with your inner life and your outer expression. When you are that way, people trust you, people open up to you, people warm around you. Even if that congruence is the fact that you're in pain and you're feeling vulnerable and you're speaking it. I'm in pain, I'm sad, I'm feeling vulnerable, I've lost, I'm having ego break. My heart is expanding and it hurts that it's expanding. It's the idea of growing pains. And that's what these separations and loss and the dissolutions do. They awaken us to our vulnerability. So I do hope that those of you who are watching this, who are going through anything like this, find hope and peace and guidance in this video. Because if all of us could just relax and feel the depth at which these transformations that we're going through as a collective and that we're going through personally, how they're meant to awaken us to a deeper level of self-love and self-compassion and forgiveness and acceptance of others, then this year, with all of its crunchiness, is the biggest gift that humanity could have ever asked for, could have ever received. And we sit with this vulnerability that 2020 has brought us to dream a truthful, more heart-filled path for each and every one of us. I believe that's the point of this. And I believe that's the point of each and every loss that we experience. So if you need help working through vulnerability and really accepting your own and sitting with it and whatever kind of guidance, I'm here to help. Because this is definitely something I understand. And you can email me at info@thegoodwoo.org if you have questions. You can go to thegoodwoo.org, the website, and look at the services tab to see what I offer in terms of helping other people. And most importantly, if you feel like there's someone in your life who would understand this message and need this message, please send this on to them. I want to thank you all for your likes, your subscriptions, and your thank you donations. It means so much to me. You know how much I love all of you, and sharing what I've learned, it's the path I'm choosing, because it's the path that chose me. So thank you all so much. Let the ego breaks come. Let the ego be burned away through your radical acceptance of your vulnerability, because it is your vulnerability that is the truth of who you really are. And from that place, if you're taking actions from that place of vulnerability, you cannot go wrong. You will be blameless. That's the purest place. Thank you all so much for viewing.